An ancient book holds secrets that could rewrite our understanding of spiritual history. This is the hidden world of the Mandaeans, one of the world's oldest and most secretive Gnostic religions. For nearly 2,000 years, this small community has guarded a profound and radical wisdom, surviving against all odds, while the outside world remained almost entirely unaware of their existence. By the end of our journey, you will possess a rare understanding of a complete, living Gnostic tradition, a system of belief most thought vanished from the earth long ago. We will uncover why their most sacred text was called the Great Treasure and explore the mysterious identity of the prophet they revere above all others. What does it mean to truly know the divine, not through faith, but through direct, personal experience? They call themselves the Mandaeans, a word that simply means the knowers. This is not a casual title. It speaks to the very heart of their identity, a community defined not by blind faith, but by a profound and personal gnosis, a direct knowledge of the divine. Their story begins in the ancient, fertile lands of Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a cradle of civilizations. For nearly 2,000 years, they have maintained a distinct existence as an ethno-religious group, meaning their faith and their ethnic identity are inextricably woven together. You are born a Mandaean into a lineage of priests and laypeople that traces back to a time before many of the world's major religions even existed. This unbroken chain of tradition is their greatest treasure and their most astonishing achievement. Consider the sheer weight of history they have witnessed and endured. Empires have risen and crumbled around them, from the Parthians and Sasanians to the caliphates and modern nation-states. Through conquests, persecutions, and immense social pressures to assimilate, they held fast to their ways. They preserved their language, their intricate rituals, and their sacred texts, not in isolated monasteries, but as a living, breathing community passing wisdom from parent to child, from priest to novice, generation after generation. Their continuous survival is a quiet miracle, a testament to a resilience that has defied all odds. This profound knowledge defines their entire view of reality. At the very center of Mandaean belief is a radical and beautiful distinction between two worlds. The first is the world of light, an infinite realm of pure, radiant spirit. This is the domain of the supreme, unknowable God, a being of such absolute perfection that it exists beyond all human comprehension, beyond time and space itself. This divine source is not a personality to be appeased, but an eternal, luminous reality from which all true life originates. And then there is our world, the world of matter, of earth and water and stars. According to their sacred texts, this physical universe is not the direct creation of that supreme light. Instead, it was fashioned by a lesser, often ignorant, divine being. This creator, or demiurge, is not considered evil in a simple sense, but is seen as a flawed architect, a craftsman who did not understand the full brilliance of the original light. The result is a cosmos that is inherently imperfect, a beautiful but deeply flawed copy of the true spiritual home. So where does that leave us, the humans living within this material copy? The Mandaeans hold that within each person exists a tiny fragment of that original divine light. It is a captive spark, a piece of heaven trapped in a jar of clay, yearning to return to its source. This is the core of Gnostic wisdom, the gnosis itself. It is the shattering realization that your deepest self is not truly of this world. You are a stranger here, a divine consciousness experiencing a temporary, material dream. But how do you awaken from that dream? The entire Mandaean spiritual path, with its rituals and its profound ethical code, is designed as a map for this exact journey. It is a systematic process of awakening the sleeping spirit within, of polishing the divine spark until it recognizes its own luminous nature, and begins its ascent back to the world of light. This is not a salvation granted by an external savior, but a liberation achieved through personal knowledge and purification. Every ritual bath in flowing water is not just a cleansing of the body, but a symbolic washing away of the material world's impurities, a reconnection with the living, flowing light of the divine. Their entire existence becomes a conscious effort to remember where they came from and to make the inner self light enough, pure enough, to find its way back home. So where did these knowers, with their radical vision of reality, first come from? The origins of the Mandaeans are one of history's great enigmas, a puzzle scholars have debated for centuries. There are no simple answers, only compelling clues scattered across ancient texts and traditions. One prominent theory suggests their community first coalesced in the Jordan Valley region, perhaps in the 1st or 2nd century of the Common Era. In this scenario, they would have been contemporaries of the earliest Christians, another group proclaiming a new revelation, yet many Mandaeans themselves, and a growing body of scholarly work, point to an even older homeland in Mesopotamia. This would place their roots not alongside Christianity, but potentially before it, reaching back into the rich spiritual soil of the ancient Near East. This possibility of pre-Christian origins makes their tradition not a branch from a later tree, but a sapling from a much older forest. Their story becomes entangled with other great movements of the time. Their sacred texts show a complex, often contentious, relationship with the forms of Judaism practiced then. They revered figures like Adam and Noah, yet they held distinct interpretations of their stories. Their interactions with early Christian groups were even more strained. Their texts contained strong criticisms of certain Christian doctrines and figures, suggesting they defined their own identity in part by what they were not. They were also neighbors to the powerful Zoroastrian Empire of Persia, and echoes of that dualistic worldview, the eternal struggle between light and darkness, can be faintly heard resonating within their own cosmology. They were not isolated. They were in dialogue and often in conflict with the major spiritual currents of their age. This was a time of immense religious ferment, a marketplace of ideas about God, creation, and salvation. The Mandaeans were not passive bystanders in this great conversation. They were active participants, forging a unique path that absorbed, resisted, and transformed the influences around them into something entirely their own. The mystery of their beginning is not a single point on a map, but a slow crystallization of a unique identity, a community of knowers finding their voice amidst the spiritual cacophony of the ancient world. Yet in this spiritual marketplace of the ancient world, one figure shines with a unique and undimmed light for the Mandaeans. They revere Yahya Yohanna, known to the wider world as John the Baptist, as their greatest and final true prophet. This veneration is the cornerstone of their identity, a belief that immediately sets them apart. For Christians, John is the forerunner, the one who prepares the way for Jesus. For Muslims, he is a righteous prophet from the past, but for the Mandaeans, John the Baptist is the culmination of prophetic truth. He is the last messenger sent directly from the world of light to guide the captive sparks of divine light back home. He is, for them, the ultimate source of the living knowledge, the gnosis, that defines their very name. This is not a minor difference in interpretation. It is a fundamental reordering of spiritual history that places their community at the heart of a divine mission. Their most sacred scriptures, like the Drasha de Yahya, the Book of John, are devoted entirely to his revelations and his life. These texts do not portray him as a wild man in the wilderness, but as a sublime teacher of mysteries. He is the master of the living water, the celestial guide who instructs his followers in the sacred rites of baptism that connect the soul directly to the flow of divine light. Imagine a tradition where the central, defining act of worship is not a symbolic sprinkling, but a full, immersive baptism in flowing river water, performed repeatedly throughout a person's life. This is the core Mandaean practice, a ritual they believe was given to them in its perfect form by John himself. Every time a Mandaean enters the Jordan, the flowing river, they are reenacting the prophet's own actions, not as a one-time initiation, but as a continual process of purification and reconnection. It is a physical enactment of their core belief, washing away the impurities of the material world to allow the inner spirit to shine more brightly. This profound connection to John shapes their entire worldview, creating a spiritual lineage that bypasses the central narratives of both Christianity and Islam. They see themselves as the direct inheritors of John's original community, the true keepers of a baptismal tradition that predates and exists independently of the faiths that grew up around it. In a world that often forgot him, the Mandaeans never did. They built their entire existence around the wisdom of the one who baptized with water, and in doing so, they preserved a vision of him that the rest of the world had largely lost. This profound devotion to John the Baptist and his teachings was meticulously preserved in a single monumental book. The Jinzar Arbiye, which translates to the Great Treasure, is the cornerstone of all Mandaean wisdom. It is not merely a holy book, it is a vast and complex map of the entire cosmos and the soul's journey through it. Physically, it is a book of immense spiritual weight, traditionally copied by hand by priest scribes in their unique Mandaean script. Its very structure is a revelation, divided into two distinct halves that mirror the core dualism of their belief. The right Jinza is the spiritual heart of the text. It is a guidebook for the soul, detailing its celestial origin, its painful descent into the material world, and its ultimate ascent back to the world of light after death. Reading the right Jinza is like being given the secret instructions for a cosmic voyage you did not even know you were on. It describes the soul's encounters with various celestial beings and the challenges it must overcome, offering prayers and knowledge to help it navigate this perilous return. It answers the most profound questions: where did I come from, and where am I going, with a clarity that is both terrifying and beautiful. The other half, the left Jinza, grounds this cosmic drama in ethical living and cosmological explanation. It contains discourses on the nature of the universe, the story of creation, and detailed accounts of the figures they revere, like Adam and Noah. Crucially, it also lays out a moral code for how to live a righteous life while trapped in this world of matter. It teaches that purity is not just a ritual state, but a way of being, encompassing truthfulness, charity, and respect for all living things, especially the flowing water they hold sacred. One key passage from the Jinzar Arbiye offers a stunning glimpse into its Gnostic depth. It describes the soul, after death, pleading before the guardian spirits of the celestial scales. The soul must proclaim its own innocence, not of worldly crimes, but of being seduced by the material world itself. It declares, "I did not worship the sun or the moon. I did not place my trust in the rulers of this world. I cherished only the hidden light within." This is the essence of gnosis, a defiant declaration that one's true identity was never of this earth. The soul's entire argument for liberation rests on this personal knowledge and rejection of the false reality constructed by the ignorant creator. The Great Treasure is therefore a complete system, a guide for both the journey of life and the journey beyond it. It provides the knowledge needed to live purely in a flawed world and the secret words needed to escape it. The Drasha di Yahya, the Book of John, offers a window into a living tradition where every ritual is a key to another world. This sacred text is far more than a biography. It is a vibrant record of divine dialogues and precise instructions, a script for a cosmic drama that the Mandaeans perform to this day. Within its pages, John the Baptist speaks directly to his followers, answering their deepest questions about the nature of the soul and the path home. These conversations are not dry theological debates. They are intimate exchanges, filled with the urgency of a teacher imparting final, essential wisdom before his departure. He reveals the hidden architecture of the universe, describing the layers of light and the beings that inhabit them, giving his community a map of the very reality they seek to transcend. This is the source of their esoteric knowledge, the secret gnosis passed from teacher to initiate. But the Book of John is also intensely practical. It meticulously details the rituals that define Mandaean life, especially the central rite of baptism, or masbuta. It does not simply suggest a ceremonial washing. It provides exacting specifications. The water must be living, flowing water from a river, never a stagnant pool. The prayers recited are not left to chance. They are the very words John himself taught, each syllable believed to carry a specific vibrational power that aligns the soul with the world of light. Every movement, from the descending into the water to the signing of the forehead with sesame oil, is described as a sacred act, a physical prayer that reenacts the soul's liberation from the body. Imagine the profound significance of this. For a Mandaean priest, performing a baptism is not just conducting a service. He is stepping into a role defined by this ancient text, channeling the direct instructions of their greatest prophet. For the person being baptized, it is not a one-time event marking membership, but a recurring return to the source of life, a deliberate stripping away of the spiritual dust accumulated from living in a world of matter. The Book of John transforms their entire liturgical life from a set of traditions into a continuous revelation. It binds the cosmic to the commonplace, making every flowing river a potential gateway and every ritual a personal conversation with the divine. This is how a small community kept its wisdom alive, not by locking it away in a library, but by weaving it into the very fabric of their daily and spiritual existence, ensuring that every generation would not just read about the light, but learn how to touch it. While the Jinza RBA provides the map, the Kalastu provides the very words for the journey. This is the canonical prayer book, a collection of hymns and invocations so central to Mandaean life that its recitation is the breath of their spirituality. Imagine a collection of poetry where every line is not merely a request to the divine, but a carefully crafted key designed to unlock a specific spiritual state. The hymns of the Kalasta are precisely that, mystical compositions of immense power and beauty, recited during every major ceremony, especially the sacred baptism. They are not simply read, they are intoned in a rhythmic, melodic chant, their ancient Aramaic syllables believed to vibrate in harmony with the celestial realms. The very act of recitation becomes a form of spiritual technology, a means of tuning the human soul to the frequency of the world of light. During a masbuta, the baptism ceremony, these prayers are the engine of the ritual. As the candidate stands in the flowing river, the priest does not offer a simple blessing. Instead, he recites a sequence of hymns from the Kalasta, each one serving a distinct purpose. One hymn might call upon the divine light beings, the Uthras, to attend the ceremony and bear witness. Another is a direct invocation to the living water itself, asking it to accept the soul and wash away the impurities of the material world. There are hymns for the sealing of the forehead with sesame oil, a symbolic anointing that marks the person as a vessel for the divine spark. Every action, from the loosening of a ritual garment to the final ascent from the water, is accompanied by its own specific prayer, transforming the entire event from a physical washing into a multi-layered spiritual operation. The water cleanses the body, but it is the words of the Kalasta that are believed to cleanse and reorient the soul. The poetry itself is breathtaking in its cosmic vision. The hymns speak of crossing rivers of light, of being clothed in garments of radiance, and of joining the great procession of liberated souls returning to their eternal home. They personify abstract concepts, speaking directly to life, to knowledge, and to truth as if they were living, conscious entities. One might call out, "I worshipped and praised the great life, and the life was confirmed in its dwellings." This is not a distant praise. It is an act of confirmation, a statement that the recitation itself helps to sustain the divine order. The prayers facilitate a direct, personal connection with these divine light beings. The Mandaean is not praying to a far-off God, but communing with a host of celestial helpers, guides who have successfully made the journey themselves and now offer their strength and knowledge to those still trapped below. This turns every recitation into a conversation across the cosmos, a whispered dialogue between a captive spark of light and the brilliant, liberated souls of the world of light. How does a community maintain its identity against the relentless tide of history? For the Mandaeans, the answer has always been found in the rhythm of these ancient prayers, repeated daily, weekly, and at every turning point in life, ensuring that the knowledge of the light is never forgotten, but continuously spoken back into existence. Yet every journey home requires a map of the territory you wish to leave behind. This brings us to the most enigmatic figure in the Mandaean cosmos, the demiurge Tahil. He is the flawed architect, the divine craftsman tasked with forging the physical universe under the distant authority of a far higher emanation from the world of light. His story is not a simple tale of good versus evil, but a profound and tragic drama of creative ambition and its unintended consequences. Tahil is a complex being, a son of the supreme hidden life who desired to imitate his source and bring a world into being. But he did not possess the pure, unadulterated substance of the world of light to work with. Instead, he had to use the materials at hand, the chaotic shadows and residues of previous cosmic events. The result was our world, a beautiful but deeply imperfect copy, a prison for divine light constructed by a well-intentioned but ultimately ignorant builder. This is the core of the Mandaean dualism, a nuanced vision that avoids a simple devil figure. Tahil is not a malicious Satan seeking to torment souls. He is a limited being who bit off more than he could chew, a junior deity whose creative act went horribly right in form and horribly wrong in spirit. He successfully built the intricate mechanism of the material cosmos, with its stars, its planets, and its laws of nature, but he could not fill it with the true, living light of his origin. He created a magnificent, empty vessel. The tragedy deepened when fragments of that divine light, souls from the world of light, became trapped within his creation. They became enmeshed in the very matter he had fashioned, forgetting their true home and identifying with the physical bodies and desires of this world. In this view, Tahil is not a figure to be hated, but a profound cosmological explanation for why the world feels both so stunningly beautiful and so spiritually suffocating. He answers the eternal question of why a universe that contains such love and wonder is also filled with suffering, decay, and a pervasive sense of longing. The world is flawed because its maker was flawed, not because he was evil. This shifts the entire spiritual goal. The purpose of life is not to fight a war against a dark lord, but to awaken from the dream that Tahil inadvertently created. It is to see through the beautiful illusion of the material world, to recognize its inherent limitations, and to direct all your yearning not toward the creation, but toward the distant, perfect source from which you originally came. The Mandaean relationship with Tahil is one of respectful detachment. They do not worship him, for he is part of the problem, the ruler of the very realm they seek to transcend. Yet they also do not demonize him, understanding that his act of creation was a necessary, if tragic, step in the soul's long education. He is the unwitting teacher whose lesson is the pain of separation, a lesson that ultimately fuels the soul's desperate, determined journey back to the light. The soul's journey home does not end with the body's last breath. It must now undertake its most perilous voyage, ascending through the celestial toll houses known as the Mandaeans. Imagine a series of fortified gates, each one marking a boundary between our world and the ultimate world of light. These are not mere way stations, but realms of intense spiritual scrutiny, guarded by powerful, often hostile, beings called archons. These archons are the servants and children of the demiurge Tahal, and they have a single, solemn duty to prevent the escape of the divine light trapped within their master's creation. They are the jailers of the cosmos, and the soul must pass their relentless inspection to proceed. This is not a test of faith, but a demonstration of knowledge and purity. At each of the 7 primary Mandaeans, the archon demands proof of the soul's origin. It blocks the path, challenging the soul's right to pass. The soul cannot fight its way through, nor can it beg for mercy. Its only weapons are the knowledge acquired during its earthly life and the ritual purity maintained through its Mandaean practice. It must recite the secret names of the divine light beings, the Uthras, and the sacred passwords found in texts like the Jinza Arbia. It must declare its innocence from the seductions of the material world, just as the scriptures instruct. I did not worship the sun or the moon, it proclaims. I did not place my trust in the rulers of this world. Every correct word, every remembered prayer, acts as a key that unlocks the next gate, but knowledge alone is not enough. The soul's very substance is weighed at these stations. A life lived in accordance with the ethical code of the left Jinza, a life of truth, charity, and respect for creation, polishes the inner spark, making it radiant and recognizable to the guardians of light. A soul burdened by falsehood, greed, or violence toward life becomes heavy and dull, its light obscured. To the archons, such a soul appears as just another piece of the material world, and they refuse its passage. It is turned back, forced to wander in the lower, darker realms until it undergoes a long and painful purification. This is why ritual purity, especially through baptism, is so vital. Each Masbuta is not just a cleansing, it is a rehearsal for this final examination. The flowing water washes away the spiritual grime that would otherwise cling to the soul, the accumulated residue of a life lived in a flawed world. The recitation of the Kalasta prayers during the ceremony implants the necessary words and melodies deep within the soul's memory, ensuring they will be available when they are most desperately needed. The entire Mandaean way of life is therefore a preparation for this single, defining ascent. It is a continuous effort to keep the soul light, knowledgeable, and pure enough to slip past the watchful eyes of its cosmic captors, and finally, joyfully, return to the infinite radiance from which it came. For the Mandaean, the flowing river is far more than water. It is a living artery connecting 2 worlds. This is the source of the Masbuta, the baptism that stands as the single most vital act of their spiritual existence. Unlike the one-time initiation common in other faiths, this is a recurring ritual, performed not just at key life moments, but as a regular, even weekly, practice. It is the essential maintenance of the soul, a continual cleansing from the grime of material existence. The ceremony itself is a symphony of precise actions, each one rich with cosmic symbolism. It begins with the selection of the site, always a riverbank with clean, freely moving water, for stagnant water cannot carry the soul's impurities away. The participant, dressed in a simple, pure white rasta, the ritual garment, is led into the current by a priest. The white cloth represents the luminous body of light the soul will one day wear in its true home, a physical reminder of the radiant self hidden within. As the priest immerses the person 3 times, the act is not a mere washing. The first descent signifies the death of the old self, the shedding of the material identity. The second immersion is a transformation, a moment of being suspended between worlds. The third and final rising is a rebirth, an emergence from the watery womb as a renewed being, momentarily free from the weight of the physical realm. Following this, a sacred meal of bread and water is shared, symbolizing communion with the divine Uthras and the sustenance they provide for the journey home. Every element, from the direction faced during prayer to the signing of the forehead with sesame oil, is a deliberate gesture that reenacts the soul's ultimate liberation. Why perform this so often? Because life in Tahil's world is a constant process of contamination. Every worry, every falsehood, every compromise with the material world adds a layer of spiritual dust that dims the inner light. The weekly Masbuta is not for new sins, but for the existential wear and tear of simply being alive in a flawed creation. It is a deliberate, rhythmic return to the source, a recalibration of the soul's compass toward the world of light. In the gentle flow of the river, the Mandaean finds the strength to continue the journey, polishing the captive spark until the day it is bright enough to find its own way back. This sacred knowledge is not freely given, but carefully guarded by a living lineage. The Mandaean priesthood stands as the human bridge between the everyday world and the luminous realms described in their scriptures. These men, known as Tarmedia, or disciples, and the higher-ranking Ganzibria, or treasurers, are not just religious leaders. They are the living librarians of an entire cosmic tradition. Their role is absolutely essential, for they are the only individuals empowered to perform the complex rituals that guide the soul, from baptism to the final rites of death. Without them, the sacred connection to the world of light, maintained for nearly 2,000 years, would simply break. The path to becoming a priest is not one of personal choice or a spiritual calling alone. It is a matter of blood and birth, a hereditary duty passed from father to son within specific families. This is not seen as elitism, but as a sacred trust, a guarantee that the intricate, unwritten knowledge is preserved with absolute fidelity across generations. A boy born into a priestly family is raised within this atmosphere, learning the rhythms of prayer and the feel of ritual objects long before he understands their profound meaning. His training is a lifelong immersion, a slow and meticulous absorption of a way of being. He must achieve flawless literacy in Mandaic, their ancient Aramaic tongue, not merely to read the scriptures, but to chant them with perfect pronunciation, for a single mispronounced word in a prayer is believed to render it powerless. He learns the precise astronomy needed to calculate their calendar, the intricate symbolism behind every ritual gesture, and the secret, esoteric interpretations of the Jinza Arbiye that are never written down, but only whispered from teacher to disciple. This oral tradition is the hidden heartbeat of Mandaeanism, a body of knowledge so sensitive that its deepest mysteries are considered too powerful for the uninitiated. The priest does not just recite prayers. He is a craftsman of the soul, using ancient formulas to build a bridge of light for his community. He knows which hymn from the Kalasta can pacify a restless spirit, and which sacred name must be invoked to open a specific Madarata for the soul of the deceased. His entire life is one of rigorous purity, adhering to strict dietary laws and moral codes to maintain the ritual cleanliness required to serve as a conduit for the divine. He is a living artifact, a walking, breathing repository of secrets that have ensured the survival of his people's unique gnosis against all odds. In a world that has constantly pressured them to disappear, the priesthood has been the unwavering anchor, holding fast to the knowledge of the light, so that every Mandaean soul might one day find its way home. Every ritual object a Mandaean priest holds is a key to the cosmos. The drabsha, their iconic banner, is far more than a piece of cloth on a pole. It is a portable map of the universe, a stunning visual representation of their entire Gnostic worldview. Woven from pure white silk, the drabsha is divided into two distinct halves by a central red ribbon. The upper white section represents the infinite, radiant world of light, the true home of the soul. The lower white section symbolizes the world of pure, flowing water, the earthly reflection of that divine light, and the medium of their most sacred rites. And the red ribbon between them, it is the fiery boundary that separates the two realms, the line of distinction that the soul must cross. At the very top, 7 fringes of silk hang down, each one representing one of the 7 celestial worlds or the 7 planets, the Matarota, that the soul must navigate after death. When this banner is planted by the riverbank during a baptism, it does not merely mark a sacred space, it actively projects the architecture of the higher reality into our world, creating a bubble of celestial order where the priest can perform his work. It reminds everyone present that the ritual they are about to undertake is not a local custom, but a cosmic event, a small piece of the world of light made visible on the banks of an earthly river. Just as the drabsha maps the macrocosm, the scandola, the priest's seal ring, protects the microcosm of the ritual itself. This is not simple jewelry. It is a tool of spiritual authority and a shield against the chaotic forces of the material world. Crafted from iron or gold, the ring's face is engraved with a complex geometric seal. This design is a labyrinth of sacred symbols, often including the names of powerful light beings and cryptic letters from the Mandaic alphabet. When the priest presses this seal into the soft clay used to sanctify ritual areas or into the sacramental bread, he is not just making a mark, he is stamping the authority of the world of light onto the substances of this world. He is, in effect, claiming this small piece of creation back from the dominion of Tahil and reconsecrating it for a divine purpose. The ring acts as a spiritual filter. It is believed that any impure or malevolent force that attempts to interfere with the ceremony is caught and neutralized by the power of the sacred symbols engraved upon it. When the priest raises his hand to chant a prayer, the scandola on his finger is a constant, silent declaration that this space is now under the jurisdiction of a higher law, a pocket of liberated territory in the midst of a flawed creation. Perhaps the most personal of these sacred tools is the margna, the ritual staff. This is the priest's constant companion, a long, straight branch often made of olive wood or reed. To see it as a walking stick is to miss its profound significance entirely. The margna is an axis mundi, a symbolic world tree that connects the earth to the heavens. During ceremonies, the priest plants it firmly in the ground next to him. This single act establishes him as the central pillar of the ritual, the human conduit through which divine energy can flow safely into the world and through which the prayers of the community can ascend. It grounds the ceremony in the earthly realm while simultaneously providing a direct line to the celestial one. The staff is also a weapon, not of war, but of spiritual defense. It is used to demarcate the sacred space of the ritual, drawing an invisible, protective circle around the participants. Any harmful influence, any wandering spirit of darkness, is believed to be unable to cross the line defined by the margna's reach. It is the shepherd's crook for the soul, guiding and guarding the flock of divine sparks as they gather at the river's edge to remember their true home. Together, the banner, the ring, and the staff form a complete ritual toolkit. One maps the territory, one seals and protects it, and the other becomes the road upon which the soul travels. In the hands of a trained priest, these objects are not symbols of belief. They are functional instruments that make the invisible, luminous reality tangibly present for a fleeting, sacred moment. The stars in the Mandaean sky are not distant balls of gas, but living, conscious entities. Their entire calendar and the rhythm of their most sacred rituals are governed by a sophisticated understanding of the celestial spheres, a system where astronomy and spirituality are one and the same. The 7 planets, along with the 12 signs of the zodiac, are seen as powerful cosmic influences, each one a dwelling place or a manifestation of a specific spiritual being, an Uthra. These are not the simple gods of pagan myth, but complex emanations of the world of light, each assigned a role in the administration of the material universe. The sun, for instance, is not merely a star, but a glorious vessel for the light being Shishlam. The moon is the abode of Sin, another Uthra, who governs its cycles. This is not primitive worship, but a nuanced cosmology that views the heavens as a vast, intricate clockwork of divine intelligence, a system put in place by the higher powers to bring a semblance of order to Tahil's flawed creation. Every movement in the sky is a sentence in a continuous celestial dialogue, and the Mandaeans have learned to listen and respond. This cosmic knowledge is not an abstract philosophy. It is woven directly into the fabric of their daily lives. Their ritual calendar is a lunisolar masterpiece, meticulously calculated by the priests to align their community with the most auspicious currents of cosmic energy. Major ceremonies, like the 5 great baptismal feasts that mark their year, are scheduled to coincide with specific celestial events, ensuring the prayers of the community are amplified as they ride the most favorable tides of spiritual light. Before a priest performs a baptism, he does not simply check the weather. He consults the stars. He calculates the positions of the planets to determine the most potent moment for the ritual, seeking an alignment that will weaken the influence of any malevolent archons and strengthen the connection to the benevolent Uthras. The act of entering the river is thus timed to be in harmony with the universe itself, a conscious merging of the microcosm of the soul with the macrocosm of the heavens. Even the design of their sacred spaces reflects this cosmic order. The ritual hut, the Bit Manda, is constructed as a symbolic representation of the cosmos, its orientation and structure mirroring the paths of the celestial spheres. When a Mandaean participates in a ritual, they are not just performing a local custom. They are stepping into a cosmically aligned engine designed to propel the soul forward on its journey. This profound integration answers a deep human question: how do we find our place in a vast and often intimidating universe? For the Mandaeans, the answer is found in the stars, not as cold points of light, but as familiar guides in the great, dark sea between two worlds. This unbroken chain of tradition is a testament to a resilience forged in fire. For nearly 2,000 years, the Mandaeans have navigated a world often hostile to their existence, their survival a delicate dance of secrecy and steadfast community. Their story is not one of empires and conquests, but of quiet endurance against relentless pressure. Under the Zoroastrian Sasanian Empire, their Gnostic beliefs, with its dualistic view of a flawed material world, placed them in a precarious position. The state religion saw the universe as a battleground between two equal, primordial forces of good and evil. The Mandaean view of a supreme, distant light and a lesser, ignorant creator was a heresy that challenged the very foundation of Zoroastrian cosmic order. They were often labeled as impure, forcing them to live on the margins of society, their practices conducted away from the eyes of the powerful. This early experience taught them the first and most crucial lesson of survival, the necessity of invisibility. They learned to become like the river reeds, bending with the political winds without breaking, guarding their sacred knowledge as the most precious and dangerous of secrets. The coming of Islam brought a new and enduring chapter of challenge. Classified as a people of the book, they were granted a protected but subservient status as dhimmis. This legal recognition came at a steep price: the jizya, a poll tax that symbolized their submission, and a set of strict social restrictions that reinforced their second-class status. They were often forbidden from building new places of worship, from testifying against Muslims in court, and from publicly displaying their faith. In this atmosphere, their secretive nature became their shield. Baptisms were performed at dawn in secluded river bends, far from curious onlookers. Their most profound texts, like the Jinza Arbiye, were copied and kept within trusted family lines, their esoteric meanings discussed only in hushed tones behind closed doors. Their entire community structure tightened into a defensive fortress. Marriages were strictly endogamous within the community to preserve both their bloodlines and their doctrinal purity from outside influence. This created an incredibly tight-knit society where everyone knew everyone, and trust was a matter of collective survival. A stranger asking too many questions about their rituals could be a genuine threat, not mere curiosity. This insularity, often mistaken for aloofness, was in fact a brilliant and necessary strategy. It created a self-contained world where their language, their rituals, and their Gnostic wisdom could be transmitted from parent to child, from priest to novice, with minimal dilution. They became masters of outward adaptation, learning to navigate the dominant culture as skilled silversmiths and boat builders, all while maintaining a completely separate, vibrant spiritual life invisible to their rulers. Even into the modern era, the pressures did not cease. The 20th and 21st centuries found them caught in the crosscurrents of nationalism and conflict, particularly in their ancestral homelands of Iraq and Iran. Wars, political upheavals, and the rise of extremist ideologies targeted them as a vulnerable minority. Their numbers, once in the tens of thousands, dwindled dramatically as many were forced to flee, becoming refugees scattered across the globe. Yet, through every exodus, they carried their faith with them. A priest would pack his scandola seal and a handwritten copy of the Kalasta before any worldly possession. In foreign lands, from Syria to Sweden to Australia, the first task was always to find flowing water, to re-establish the connection to the world of light, and to rebuild the community, the same fortress walls constructed now in a new and unfamiliar world. Their entire history is a chronicle of this delicate balance, how a people can appear to bend to the will of empires while secretly holding fast to a truth they know is older than any kingdom on earth. This alternative perspective on Christian origins is one of the most startling aspects of the Mandaean tradition. Their sacred texts present a narrative that directly challenges the foundational story of Christianity, not from a place of later rivalry, but from what they claim is a more authentic, original truth. In the Mandaean worldview, John the Baptist was the final and perfect messenger of light. Jesus, whom they call Yes, who appears in their scriptures not as a savior, but as a problematic and rebellious figure who led many astray. He is depicted as a former disciple of John, who fundamentally corrupted the teachings he received, where John preached a path of repeated purification through water and a strict ethical code to awaken the inner divine spark, Yes, who is portrayed as introducing a dangerous shortcut. He allegedly taught that a single act of faith was sufficient for salvation, bypassing the lifelong work of spiritual purification and gnosis that John embodied. For the Mandaeans, this was a catastrophic deviation. It was like telling a student they could master a complex craft without any of the practice, reducing a profound, transformative journey into a simple transaction. This was not just a different interpretation. It was, in their eyes, a betrayal of the entire Gnostic path. The Mandaean Book of John contains dialogues where John himself confronts this corruption. In one passage, John laments that a deceiver has arisen, one who perverts the words of life and leads the souls of his followers into darkness by tying them more firmly to the material world through false promises. This portrayal offers a breathtakingly different lens through which to view the first-century religious landscape. It suggests that the conflict between the followers of John and the followers of Jesus was not a minor historical footnote, but a fundamental schism over the very meaning of salvation. Was it a free gift granted through belief in a Messiah, or was it a hard-won liberation achieved through personal knowledge and ritual purity? The Mandaeans firmly believed it was the latter, and they saw the rise of Christianity as the triumph of a simpler, more appealing, but ultimately less potent spiritual formula. This adversarial stance was likely born from direct and painful experience. In the early centuries, as Christian groups grew in influence and political power, the Mandaeans would have found themselves pressured to abandon their complex Gnostic system in favor of the new orthodoxy. Their texts, which criticize Christian practices like the Eucharist, reflect this tension. They saw the consumption of bread and wine as symbolic of the body and blood of Christ, as a deeply misguided act, one that further bound the soul to the physical realm it was supposed to transcend. To them, their own ritual meal of bread and water was a communion with the light itself, not a participation in a material sacrifice. This historical conflict, preserved in their ancient writings, does more than just present an alternative history. It reveals the Mandaeans as courageous defenders of a specific kind of wisdom. They position themselves as the stubborn guardians of John's original revelation, a living remnant from a time before the story of Jesus reshaped the Western world. While Christianity spread across continents, the Mandaeans held their ground, a small community whispering an ancient secret that the true path home might not be the one the world had chosen to follow. The status of a people of the book was both a shield and a cage. Under early Islamic law, the Mandaeans were identified as Sabians, a cryptic term from the Quran that granted them a crucial, protected status as dhimmis. This legal recognition meant they were not to be forcibly converted, a vital guarantee that allowed their community to persist. But this protection came with a heavy price, the jizya, a poll tax that was both a financial burden and a public symbol of their political submission. More profoundly, it cemented their place as a permanent minority, subject to a web of social restrictions that dictated every aspect of their public life. They were often barred from building new houses of worship. Their testimony in court was considered inferior, and they were expected to show deference in all interactions with the Muslim majority. This legal framework forced their vibrant, luminous faith into the shadows, shaping them into a people of profound discretion. Their most sacred rituals, like the baptism in the flowing river, became acts performed at dawn or in secluded, inaccessible riverbeds, away from the eyes of a world that might not understand or might seek to interfere. This was not a choice, but a strategy for survival, a way to keep the light burning without attracting the wrong kind of attention. Over the centuries, this dynamic of guarded coexistence shaped the very structure of their community. To preserve their unique identity and esoteric knowledge from dilution or persecution, they turned inward. Marriages were arranged almost exclusively within the community, strengthening a powerful internal bond while building an invisible wall against the outside world. Their renowned skills as silversmiths and boat builders were more than just trades. They were specialized niches that provided economic value to the broader society, granting them a measure of tolerated usefulness. This delicate dance of adaptation and secrecy defined their existence under various Islamic empires, from the Abbasids to the Ottomans. They learned to navigate the complexities of the dominant culture with a quiet mastery, all the while maintaining a parallel, hidden spiritual life centered on the river and the secret meanings of the Jinza Orbia. This long history of cautious interaction, of being in a land but never fully of it, directly prefigured their modern story of displacement. The pressures that began centuries ago intensified in the modern era, with the rise of nationalism and religious extremism in their homelands of Iraq and Iran, making their continued existence their increasingly precarious, setting the stage for a great and painful dispersion. The sacred words chanted by a Mandaean priest often hold a second, hidden meaning known only to the initiated. This is the world of the secret language, a sophisticated system of linguistic codes woven directly into their prayers and texts to to protect the most potent Gnostic mysteries. When a priest recites a hymn from the Kalasta that speaks of a great tree or a flowing spring, the congregation hears a beautiful spiritual metaphor. But for the trained priest, these words are precise technical terms. The tree is not a symbol of life. It is a coded diagram of the entire cosmic structure, its roots in the world of light, and its branches representing the paths of the soul. A simple phrase about a pure spring is actually a reference to a specific celestial emanation, a current of divine energy that the soul must learn to navigate. This dual-layer language acts as a perfect safeguard, allowing profound truths to be spoken aloud during public rituals without their esoteric power being exposed to those unprepared for their full weight. It is a living encryption where poetry conceals cosmology. One of the most fascinating examples is the code surrounding the concept of the Jordan, or Yardna. To any listener, this is the flowing river used for baptism, but within the inner teachings, the word Jordan has at least 3 distinct, coded meanings. On the first level, it is indeed the earthly river. On the second, it becomes the river of light flowing through the celestial realms. And on the deepest, most secret level, the Jordan is the very spinal column of the enlightened individual, the inner channel through which the divine spark ascends towards higher consciousness. A prayer that speaks of entering the Jordan is therefore operating on all 3 levels simultaneously, describing a physical ritual, a cosmic journey, and an internal alchemy all at once. This is not deception, but spiritual discretion. The tradition holds that certain knowledge is like a powerful electrical current. It can illuminate a properly prepared mind, but it can overwhelm or even harm one that is not ready. The codes ensure that the deepest teachings are only unlocked for those who have undergone the years of rigorous training, ethical purification, and personal commitment required to handle them responsibly. A priest learns these interpretations not from a book, but through a slow oral transmission from his teacher. He is given a key phrase, a story, or an analogy that unlocks the symbolic meaning of a common prayer. For instance, the frequent mention of a pearl in their hymns is not merely a symbol of beauty. It is a specific code for the soul itself, a captive spark of light hidden within the rough, material shell of the physical body. When a hymn says a pearl was lost in the turbulent sea, it is a precise description of the soul's fall into the chaotic realm of matter. The entire Mandaean path can be seen as the process of recovering that pearl, polishing it, and returning it to the divine crown from which it fell. This secret language transformed their most sacred text, the Jinza Arbiye, into a multi-volume puzzle. A passage that reads like a historical account of ancient kings is, to an initiate, an allegory for the descent of soul forces into the material universe. A list of strange-sounding names for plants and rivers is actually a catalog of spiritual virtues and vices, or the names of celestial gatekeepers. The book's title, The Great Treasure, is itself a code, hinting that its true value is not in the literal stories, but in the hidden wisdom that must be mined from them with the right keys. This practice of encoding knowledge did more than just protect secrets. It created a living, breathing tradition of contemplation. Every prayer became a door that could only be opened from the inside, ensuring that the most radical Gnostic truths about the soul's divine origin and its journey home would survive, not as dead letters on a page, but as a living flame passed carefully from one prepared heart to the next. The riverbanks of Iraq and Iran, for centuries the heartland of the Mandaean people, grew silent. The late 20th and early 21st centuries unleashed a tide of war and persecution that finally broke their 2,000-year-old presence in the region. The conflicts that swept through Iraq, from the Iran-Iraq War to the Gulf War and the subsequent instability, made their ancient homeland a landscape of existential threat. As a small, non-Muslim community with no militia to protect them, They were uniquely vulnerable to extortion, kidnapping, and violence from various armed factions. Their distinct identity, once protected by centuries of cautious secrecy, now made them a target. The community that had survived empires found itself facing an enemy it could not reason with, an ideology that saw their very existence as a blasphemy. One by one, the families who had lived along the Tigris and Euphrates for generations were forced to make an impossible choice: abandon their sacred rivers or face almost certain death. This was not a migration, it was a shattering. The global Mandaean population, once numbering in the tens of thousands in Iraq alone, dwindled to a few thousand, scattered to the winds. They became a people of the diaspora, their exodus tracing lines of flight to unlikely new homes, from the suburbs of Detroit and Sydney to the cities of Sweden and the Netherlands. They arrived as refugees, carrying little more than their faith, a priest's ritual staff carefully packed beside a change of clothes, a handwritten prayer book, the most valuable possession they own. The first and most profound challenge in these new lands was the search for the one thing their spirituality cannot exist without: flowing water. How do you perform a masbuta, a baptism that requires a living river, when you are resettled in a desert city like Phoenix, or a European capital where rivers are industrialized canals? The community had to innovate while holding fast to the core of their tradition. They began to seek out natural springs, clean creeks in state parks, or any body of moving water that could serve as a temporary yardin. Priests would fly across continents to perform rituals for isolated families, a global network of light desperately trying to reweave its torn fabric. The second, more insidious challenge was the slow erosion of identity in a secular, assimilating world. In their ancestral lands, their identity was reinforced by the surrounding culture, a clear line between us and them. In the West, that line blurred. Young Mandaeans, growing up speaking English or Swedish, attending secular schools, faced pressures their ancestors never could have conceived. The intricate rules of ritual purity, the commitment to marrying within the community, the deep study of a complex Aramaic language, these were hard sells in a world of infinite choice and individual freedom. The very secrecy that had protected them for millennia now became a liability as the younger generation, disconnected from the old context, sometimes struggled to understand the profound reasons behind the ancient codes. Yet, in the face of this cultural dilution, a remarkable thing happened. The diaspora ignited a new kind of determination. Mandaean community centers began to rise in places like Sydney and San Antonio. For the first time, they were building public institutions, not hiding their faith, but proclaiming it, teaching their language and rituals to children who had never seen the Tigris. The internet, once a threat to insularity, became a tool for connection, with online archives of the Ginza RBA and virtual gatherings that linked a family in Sweden with their cousins in Jordan. The tragedy of displacement forced a transformation from a secretive, geographically anchored community into a global, self-conscious nation, fighting for its survival with a new and public voice. They are now racing against time, working to digitize their manuscripts, train new priests in a dislocated world, and translate their secret wisdom into languages their children can understand, all without losing the esoteric heart of the knowledge itself. Their greatest test is no longer surviving persecution, but preserving meaning across an unbridgeable gap of space and time. A single break in the chain could mean the loss of a ritual perfected over 2,000 years. The Mandaean diaspora, while ensuring the people's survival, has placed their intricate oral traditions in greater peril than any historical persecution ever did. The heart of the problem is the dangerously small number of trained priests. These are not simply men who have memorized prayers. They are living libraries of unwritten knowledge, each one a master of celestial astronomy, complex ritual choreography, and the secret linguistic codes embedded within the hymns. With their communities scattered across the globe, the traditional master-disciple relationship, the slow, meticulous passing of secrets from one generation to the next, has been fractured. A young man born into a priestly family in Michigan may have the lineage, but without a resident Ganzibria, a master treasurer, living nearby to guide him through the years of training, that sacred lineage risks ending with him. The rituals are so precise, so dependent on this unbroken oral transmission, that they cannot be fully learned from a book alone. The correct intonation of a prayer, the exact timing of a gesture during the baptismal rite, the esoteric interpretation of a passage from the Jinza Arbiye, these nuances are whispered, not written. If that whisper is not passed on, the ritual loses its power, becoming an empty shell performed without its luminous core. Among the most vulnerable ceremonies is the Massiqta, the Ascension Ritual for the Dead. This is the ultimate guide for the soul, a complex, days-long ceremony designed to safely propel the deceased through the celestial Matarata. It involves the creation of an elaborate ritual space, the recitation of hundreds of specific hymns in a precise order, and the construction of a sacred clay effigy. Every detail, from the type of wood used in the fire to the sequence of names invoked, is critical. If a single element is forgotten or performed incorrectly, the Mandaeans believe the soul's journey can be impeded, left vulnerable, and lost in the realms between worlds. With only a handful of elderly priests left who can perform the Massiqta flawlessly from memory, this essential roadmap for the soul is on the brink of vanishing. Similarly at risk are the lesser-known seasonal rituals that once wove the community together throughout the year, ceremonies celebrating the 5 great baptisms tied to specific celestial alignments. The knowledge of how to calculate these dates using the stars and the unique prayers for each feast resides in the memories of a dwindling few. In response, the global Mandaean community has launched a race against time, a desperate project of documentation and revitalization. Recognizing that their greatest treasure is now their most fragile, they are using modern technology to preserve ancient wisdom. Priests are being filmed performing rituals in their entirety, creating a visual record for future generations. Audio recordings are being made of the melodic chants of the Kalasta, capturing the exact pronunciation and rhythm that written text cannot convey. In community centers from Australia to America, intensive workshops are being organized, bringing together the remaining priests with the younger generation. Here, they are not just teaching the words, they are painstakingly transferring the feel of the ritual, the weight of the Margna staff in the hand, the specific way to pour the sesame oil. They are translating their sacred texts for the first time, not to reveal their secret meanings to the world, but to make the foundational stories accessible to their own children who may not be fluent in Mandaean. This is a profound shift from centuries of secrecy, a necessary adaptation to ensure that the light is not extinguished. The goal is not to change the rituals, but to build a new kind of chain, one made of digital files and determined teachers, hoping it can be strong enough to carry the living water of their tradition into an uncertain future. Their ancient whispers are finding new ears in a world hungry for direct spiritual experience. While the Mandaean community itself remains small and guarded, its profound Gnostic wisdom has begun to seep into the modern consciousness, offering a startlingly complete template for what many today are independently seeking. The late 20th century saw a remarkable resurgence of interest in Gnosticism, fueled in part by discoveries like the Nag Hammadi Library, which revealed a lost world of early Christian mysticism. Yet those texts were fragments, the artifacts of movements long extinct. The Mandaeans, by stunning contrast, offered a living tradition, an unbroken river of Gnostic practice that had flowed continuously from the ancient world into the present. For scholars and spiritual seekers alike, this was not just a historical curiosity, it was a revelation. Their sacred texts, like the Jinza Arbiye, provided a Rosetta Stone for understanding the broader Gnostic worldview. Concepts that appeared as cryptic hints in other texts, like the flawed demiurge or the captive divine spark, were here laid out in exhaustive, systematic detail, supported by a full ecosystem of rituals, prayers, and a lived ethical code. This was not a philosophy to be debated in a classroom, but a complete path to be walked, writers and thinkers exploring the frontiers of consciousness found in Mandaeanism, a sophisticated pre-modern psychology. Their map of the soul's journey through the Madarita, the celestial toll houses, reads like a profound allegory for the inner obstacles we all face, the archons of our own fear, doubt, and attachment that guard the gates to higher awareness. The entire system presents a powerful answer to a very modern question: how do we awaken from the consensus trance of ordinary life? The Mandaean answer is not a weekend workshop, but a lifelong dedication to purification and knowledge. A path that insists true liberation requires both profound inner work and precise outer practice. This resonates deeply with contemporary spiritualities that value direct experience over dogmatic belief. The Mandaean emphasis on personal gnosis, on knowing the divine light within oneself rather than merely having faith in an external savior, aligns perfectly with the seeker's desire for unmediated connection. Their rituals are not empty ceremonies, but embodied technologies for shifting consciousness. The repeated baptism in living water is a powerful somatic practice, a physical reset that washes away not just symbolic sin, but the accumulated psychic debris of modern life. What does this 2,000-year-old tradition offer the digital age? It offers a reminder that the search for light is not a new invention. It provides a time-tested map for a journey we are all, in our own ways, trying to make, back to a home we have almost forgotten. In a world saturated with information but starved for wisdom, the Mandaeans stand as quiet guardians of a secret, that the greatest treasure is not out there, but hidden within, waiting to be known. Even with all we have uncovered, the Mandaeans guard secrets that scholarship has yet to fully unravel. One of the most tantalizing puzzles surrounds the very script they use to record their sacred text. The Mandaic alphabet is a beautiful and distinct writing system, but its exact origins remain shrouded in uncertainty. Did it evolve directly from the Aramaic script used in 1st century Palestine, or was it a later development in Mesopotamia, influenced by other regional scripts? The answer could hold vital clues about their earliest geographical roots and the precise moment their community crystallized into its own unique identity. This is not merely an academic debate, for the script itself is considered sacred, a vessel for divine names that must be written with perfect accuracy to hold their power. Another profound mystery lies in their potential connection to other esoteric groups of the time, such as the Essenes, the Jewish community believed to have authored the Dead Sea Scrolls. Both groups placed an immense emphasis on ritual purity, flowing water, and possessed a distinct dualistic worldview. Were the Mandaeans and Essenes distant cousins, emerging from a similar stream of Jewish mysticism that rejected the temple priesthood in Jerusalem? Or do these parallels simply reflect a common spiritual language spoken by many dissident groups in the region? The evidence is fragmentary, a collection of intriguing similarities without a definitive historical bridge. This leads to an even more compelling question: what texts have been lost to time? The Jinza Arbiye and the Book of John are monumental works, but they themselves sometimes reference other, older scrolls that have not survived. What profound revelations about the world of light or the nature of the demiurge Tahil might those lost codices have contained? The hope for modern researchers is that undiscovered manuscripts may still lie hidden, perhaps sealed in jars, and buried in the Iraqi marshlands or waiting in an uncatalogued private collection. Every new archaeological survey or digitization project carries the potential to uncover a fragment that could reshape our understanding of this entire Gnostic tradition. The quest for these answers is now a global effort, combining linguistic analysis, historical detective work, and the poignant oral histories of the Mandaean people themselves. Each small discovery is another piece of a 2,000-year-old puzzle, slowly bringing the hidden history of the knowers into a clearer, though still mysterious, light. The sun has not yet risen over the river, but the Mandaean is already awake, beginning the day with the first of many prayers. This is the Rami, a quiet recitation that sets the tone for the hours to come, a deliberate act of remembrance before the demands of the material world intrude. The entire day is structured around this constant return to the light, a rhythm that turns ordinary life into a continuous spiritual practice. Before even a sip of water is taken, before a morsel of food is touched, the hands must be ritually washed. This is not about physical hygiene alone. It is a symbolic cleansing, a washing away of the spiritual residue accumulated during sleep, a state considered closer to the chaotic realms. Every meal is preceded and followed by prayer, transforming the simple act of eating into a sacrament that sustains the body without binding the soul too tightly to its physical needs. This mindfulness extends to the food itself, governed by strict dietary laws designed to maintain the body's purity as a fit vessel for the divine spark. Certain animals are considered too connected to the forces of darkness or chaos to be consumed. The meat that is eaten must be prepared according to precise ritual slaughter, ensuring the life force is released with respect and the substance remains as pure as possible. For a Mandaean silversmith working at his bench, or a mother preparing the family's midday meal, this is not a burdensome restriction. It is a constant, tactile reminder that they are navigating a flawed world, carefully selecting only those energies that will not cloud the inner light. The very act of choosing what to eat becomes a daily exercise in discernment, a small but significant rebellion against the ignorant creator's chaotic design. The flow of the week builds toward the moment of greatest renewal, the Mas Buddha. As the appointed day approaches, a subtle shift occurs in the household. There is a heightened attention to thoughts and actions, a conscious effort to avoid conflict or falsehood, for these would add weight to the soul before its cleansing. When the day arrives, the entire family travels to the riverbank, often at dawn. The air is cool, and the sound of the flowing water is the only music. There, alongside their community, they participate in the ancient ritual, not as a somber obligation, but as a joyful return to the source. The children play by the water's edge, growing up with the feel of the river as their most familiar sanctuary. For the adults, the immersion is a profound release, a feeling of being spiritually scrubbed clean, emerging lighter, and reconnected to the world of light. This weekly rhythm ensures that the grime of the world never has too long to accumulate, that the soul's compass is regularly recalibrated toward its true north. Holy days punctuate the year, each one a celestial event that draws the community closer together. These are not merely historical commemorations, but active participations in the cosmic cycle. The 5 great baptismal feasts are timed with the movements of the stars and planets, aligning the community's collective energy with the most auspicious currents of divine light. On these days, work ceases. The focus is entirely on prayer, ritual meals shared with family and neighbors, and of course, the great communal baptisms in the river. The entire community, from the eldest priest to the youngest child, is united in a single purpose: to strengthen the bonds of light that connect them to each other and to their true home. In this way, a calendar becomes a map of the soul's journey, and a holiday is not a day off, but a day on, a dedicated effort to collectively polish the divine sparks within. From the first whispered prayer at dawn to the final reflection at night, every action is infused with meaning, every moment a step on the path back to the light. Their legacy is a fragile light held steady against 2,000 years of darkness. The Mandaeans offer humanity something utterly irreplaceable, a complete, living library of Gnostic wisdom. While other ancient traditions of direct knowledge exist only in fragments and ruins, the Mandaeans preserved the entire system, a full blueprint for the soul's journey from its divine origin through its earthly captivity and back to its luminous home. Their contribution is not merely a set of old beliefs, but a fully functioning spiritual technology, complete with its own rituals, ethics, and a map of the afterlife, all maintained in an unbroken chain of practice. This gives scholars a priceless key for understanding the diverse religious landscape of the ancient world, revealing that the paths not taken by mainstream history were just as complex and profound. For the modern seeker, their tradition provides a powerful mirror, challenging our most basic assumptions about the nature of reality, the self, and the divine. They ask us a radical question: what if our deepest sense of not belonging in this world is not a psychological flaw, but a spiritual truth? What if our longing for something more is actually a memory of a home we have almost forgotten? Their entire way of life is an answer to that question, a testament to the human spirit's relentless pursuit of its source. The importance of protecting this endangered tradition now transcends their community alone. In a world facing ecological crisis and spiritual disconnection, their sacred relationship with flowing water offers a profound lesson in reverence for the natural world. Their ethical code, which emphasizes truth, non-violence, and purity, provides a framework for living responsibly within a creation they see as flawed, yet worthy of respect. The potential loss of the Mandaean flame would be a loss for all of humanity, the silencing of one of the oldest and most consistent voices reminding us that our true identity is divine light. Their survival is a quiet rebellion against the forgetfulness of the ages, a stubborn insistence that the most important knowledge is not about conquering the world, but about remembering how to leave it. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of a secret kept alive. The Mandaeans have shown us that an entire universe of meaning can flourish in the quiet margins of history, preserving a radical truth about the soul's divine origin and its longing for return. They are the last guardians of a complete Gnostic world, a living bridge to an ancient understanding that true salvation is found not through faith alone, but through the direct, personal knowledge of the light within. This is their profound legacy, a challenge to our deepest assumptions about spirituality itself. Their survival against impossible odds is not just their victory, but a gift to all of us, a reminder that other ways of knowing have always existed, whispering a different story about who we are and why we are here. Now, the responsibility to ensure this light does not fade falls to a wider world. You can become part of their continued story. Seek out the work of organizations dedicated to cultural preservation. Support efforts to document their language and digitize their ancient texts. Most importantly, carry the question they have guarded for 2 millennia into your own life. Ask what it means to truly know, rather than just to believe. In a world of noise and distraction, the quiet quest for gnosis is perhaps the most revolutionary journey any of us can ever undertake.